Okay, so this is a video by MouthyInfidel. He and I have had a couple of conversations. He's a nice guy. I'm not going to say anything bad about him. Very cordial conversations I've had with the guy. No insults exchanged. But since I had a talk with him, I decided to subscribe to him and start watching some of his videos. And this one caught my eye. I started listening, and the only reason I'm making this video is I feel like it's lacking in perspective, and I just can't help myself. I'm sorry, I just can't help myself. I have to talk about this because you guys, between both of you, this is going to be a congested video because it's MouthyInfidel responding to Matt Walsh, who's responding to a tweet by Natalie Portman. So I'm responding to all of this. It's a little congested, but if you're listening to this video, just look at the faces and figure out the voices, and then go back to listening to it because there's not really anything visually that you need to pay attention to. Anyway.
Okay, so apparently this whole defund the police
and sorry, I'm drinking
meme has begun to gain a bit of traction in the mainstream.
Bro, it's not gaining traction. It is the mainstream. Where do you think this comes from? Defunding the police, this slogan is coming from BLM. BLM that is so astroturfed, it's popped out. It's popped up in Osaka, Japan, and Iceland. In every nation that America has soft power, which is very ironic, isn't it? Nice little coincidence there.
Natalie Portman recently came out in favor of defunding the police. And Matt Walsh is not happy about that. And Matt Walsh has some thoughts and some big-brained arguments, all based on facts and logic, of course, that he's going to express in this video. And we're going to go over that. Because why not?
Number 4, Natalie Portman has come out in favor of defunding the police. Very brave stuff, extremely heroic. Here's what she said on Instagram. She said, "When I first heard hashtag defund the police, I have to admit my first reaction was fear. My whole life, police have made me feel safe. But that's exactly the center of my white privilege. The police..."
I'm just going to stop here. Not for any particular reason, not because I want to give any commentary, but because everyone at the Daily Wire, for some weird reason, everyone in there seems to talk like Destiny. Everyone's on some drug. I don't know. I have to know, like, during the morning meetings at the Daily Wire, does Ben Shapiro come out with like a fucking huge bag of coke and just have everyone snort a bump? I don't understand. Why do you people talk like this? What is gained by just like fast talking bullshit like this? Like it's and it doesn't even give you time to think. This is why this guy fucks up the lines here.
Police make me, as a white woman, feel safe, while my black friends, family, and neighbors feel the opposite. Police make them feel terror, and for good reason. Police are the 6th leading cause of death of black men in this country.
Police make them feel terror, and for good reason. I agree with that statement, but for a different reason. No, I'm kidding.
Country. These are not isolated incidents. They are patterns and part of the system of over-policing of black Americans. Reforms have not worked. Minneapolis, where George Floyd was murdered, is one of the most progressive police forces in the country, having undergone extensive anti-bias training.
Anti-bias training from who? ADL.
I've gotten to the age of my life where if my gut feels uncomfortable, I take the situation as wrong. But this concept initially made me uncomfortable because I was wrong. Because the system that makes me feel uncomfortable is wrong. Okay, because the system that makes me feel comfortable is wrong. Okay, she's saying, if I felt comfortable with it...
See, nigga, if you slow down, you could read it and then get it right the first time.
As a white person, then I would know that it's wrong. Here's what she's saying, that I know my gut instinct is wrong because I'm white.
Look at this goofy-eyed motherfucker. Did you see that? I just noticed that. I didn't notice that the first time I watched this video. Look at his eyes. Look at how fucking uneven his eyes. Your eyes need a level, sir.
My God. Have some self-respect. Get a hold of yourself.
She does have self-respect. She does have Natalie Portman isn't white. This is my fellow white people posting here. And by the way, but maybe before we go any further, I should just read this. I just brought up her Wikipedia article on my phone here. Her Wikipedia article reads like this: Natalie Portman, born Natalie Portman, is an actress and filmmaker with dual Israeli and American citizenship. Prolific in film since a teenager, she has starred in blockbusters and also played psychologically troubled women in independent films. So in other words, she didn't have to suck Harvey Weinstein's micropenis to get an audition, but she plays his victims in her movies. fucking amazing. But I'm privileged because I'm an upper class white woman. By the way, and look, I don't. Again, I like MouthyInfidel as a person. He's a nice guy. But neither him nor Matt Walsh are going to push back against this, because they both agree that, like, her privilege is derived from the fact that she is an upper class white woman. MouthyInfidel because he's a leftist and he's, you know, on their side essentially, and Matt Walsh because he works for the Daily Wire. He works for Ben Shapiro.
What the hell is wrong with you people? Well, I know because I'm white, I can't trust anything I think.
Okay, so notice how nobody ever said that. Nowhere in that entire post did Natalie Portman say that she assumes her gut instinct is always wrong, or in Matt Walsh's words, that she can't trust anything she thinks because she's white. In fact, she said the exact opposite. Literally in the post that Matt Walsh read, Natalie Portman says that she usually trusts her gut instinct, but in this specific case, her gut instinct was wrong.
Yeah, so first of all, buddy, you're giving her way too much credit here. She's lying. This whole post is bullshit. This whole tweet is bullshit. Her gut feeling, like, no, she's just making this shit up. She's just saying this because she's like, well, you know, normally, as an upper-class white person, I would derive a sense of safety from the police. No, you derive a sense of safety from the fact that you have a massive community of powerful tiny hat gangs that are willing to back you and give you all these opportunities and essentially hand a life of luxury to you because of who you are, because of the connections you have. And by the way, I didn't know this. If you look up her Wikipedia, she went to Harvard. So that proves my point right there, because you don't get into Harvard just by being smart, okay? Obviously, you know, you're supposed to be smart to get in, but yeah, fundamentally, to get into an Ivy League school like that, you have to have connections, whether you're Jewish or not. So this woman is well connected and has been probably her entire life. And again, she was born in Israel. She said
that she usually assumes that when she's uncomfortable with something, it's wrong. But in this case, she was uncomfortable with the idea of defunding the police because she was wrong. That's what she said. That's a far cry away from saying that she can never trust what she thinks because she's white. She literally at no point said that. So Matt Walsh is literally making things up at this point to sort of stir up this "they're coming for the whites" narrative.
You see what he's doing there? They're coming for the whites. White women like Natalie Portman. They're coming for the white women like Natalie Portman. It's kind of funny, but you know, here's what he's doing. MouthyInfidel. Here's what Matt Walsh is doing. He is a conservative who works for a Jewish conservative, okay? So he's pandering to the white conservatives that make up Ben Shapiro's base by saying, oh, white privilege, that's a bad thing. That's a cultural Marxist thing. We don't believe in that. Like, it doesn't matter what the facts are. He's just playing his role, bro.
Because he's a crypto-fascist. Or, at the very least, he's a useful fucking idiot doing the work of crypto-fascists.
Actually, and I'm not calling you a useful idiot, buddy, but I would actually say his position is antithetical to mine. I'm actually okay with defunding the police because the cops are the ones that we have to fear whenever we clash with Antifa. Nobody's scared of a bunch of, you know, string bean motherfuckers with balaclavas in the street. We'll beat the shit out of Antifa if we're ever put in a situation. But then we got to worry about the cops, and we have to worry about the you-know-who-run legal system throwing the book at us for defending ourselves, as they did with people like Rob Rundo, William Planer, you know, all of these guys. So, you know, nobody's scared of you. We're scared of the police. So actually, I'm okay with defunding the police. I'm okay with that because they're not providing me a sense of security or order in the first place. They're my enemy, really. So in a way, if we're going to go by who's pandering to fascists, you, sir, are the one agreeing with me.
I am just scum. I am dirt. Whatever I think must be wrong. Of course, much of what she said here is completely wrong. She says that police are the 6th leading cause of death for black men in this country. That's false. Not true. Here are the top 6 leading causes of death for black men in this country, according to the CDC. Heart disease, cancer, unintentional injury, homicide, stroke, and diabetes. police are not on the list.
Okay, so that's actually true. If you look at CDC data for the leading causes of death for black people in the US, the police do not appear on the list, but the reason that the police do not appear on the list is because police-related deaths is not a metric that the CDC tracks. I checked.
Sorry. So wait a second. Are you telling me that the Center of Disease Control does not track police violence? That's crazy.
If somebody's killed, if a black man is killed by a police, then the CDC just lumps that in with the categories of like maybe homicide or assault or something like that. But actually, like police-related deaths is not a real metric that the CDC examines. So Matt Walsh is literally trying to claim that a variable isn't relevant by referencing data that doesn't even examine that variable. But if you look at data, if you look at studies that actually do observe that variable, you find that Natalie Portman is actually correct. Because a study done by the University of Michigan, Rutgers University, and the University of Wisconsin actually found that when you look at police-related deaths as a metric, police-caused deaths are the sixth leading cause of death among black men in the U.S.
So here's something. If later on in the video, he makes reference to Matt Walsh makes reference to a number. He says only 9 black men were killed by police last year. Now, more than twice as many white people were killed by cops at that time. I think it was 9 to 19. We can gloss over that. Whatever. Who cares? They're white. Fuck them. Right? But my point is, I wonder, I haven't looked at this study. I don't know what study he's referencing. I didn't even check. But I do wonder how many police deaths are listed last year, because if there are 9 on record, and I know MouthyInfidel is going to take issue with that number, but I would like to compare the official number with the university studies number, because they're claiming it's the 6th leading cause of death among black men, right? So, okay, we're comparing 9 to, whatever number you get is the 6th leading cause of death for the entire race in America. I wonder what the disparity in number is there and what the cause would be, like what the different methodology of attaining these numbers is. I just wonder, just a curiosity thing, because I tend to be a little bit skeptical of academia myself.
US. So, funny how that works, isn't it?
So that is simply false. Totally false. She says these are not isolated incidents. They are. George Floyd is an isolated incident. There were 9 unarmed black men killed by police last year. In a country of 330 million, I would call that an isolated incident. Yeah.
So the problem is he's basing this claim on a tally done by the Washington Post. But the Washington Post, in that tally, which is where he's getting the figure of only 9 black people were killed last year, that tally was only taking into account deaths which were caused by gunfire of police in the line of duty. So the two obvious problems with using this to claim that only 9 black people were killed by the police is that not all black people killed by the police are killed by police who are actively on duty, and also not all black people who are killed by police on or off duty are killed by gunfire. A lot of people are killed, or a lot of black people who are killed by the police are killed by asphyxiation or beatings or even tasers.
Okay, so first of all, are we to believe that cops, when off duty, when they hang up their uniform, they then get in their civilian clothes and then go hunt black people for sport? Like what are we saying here? Oh, because a cop who was not on duty, who was in a civilian situation, who perhaps was witnessing a crime, tried to stop that crime, and then was put in a situation where he had to kill a black guy and that should be counted as police violence because the guy happened to be a cop. I know. Okay. Well, whatever. I don't really care if that's counted or not. And also tasers. Really? Tasers? I mean, that's a non-lethal force. I mean, you could say, well, the guy still died, but if you die of a taser, you died because you had a pre-existing condition, typically. Like, most people who die after being tased die of a heart attack, right? That's typically what it is. It's the shock, fucks up the rhythm of your heart, and then you have a heart attack. So are we going to use that number to say that cops are murdering people when they're using non-lethal force? Is that what you want to do? Because look, I'm not suggesting that Matt Walsh isn't biased in favor of cops, but you're clearly biased against them if you're willing to use methodologies like this.
Example of this would be George Floyd. So Matt Walsh is literally trying to say that George Floyd is an isolated incident, and his evidence for this is a data point which wouldn't even take George Floyd into account as a police-related death.
Sorry.
So that's how little research this motherfucker does.
Well, to be honest, I wouldn't consider George Floyd a police-related death, given what we know from the fucking medical examiner. And I know, the medical examiner said that if the cop hadn't been kneeling on his neck, then he wouldn't have died of a heart attack. You can't know that, okay? Anybody that tries to make that argument, listen, if you know anything, even remotely basically about medical science, you can't know that the kneeling on his neck was more of a primary cause of a heart attack than the fentanyl in his system. You don't. There's no possible methodology you could use of obtaining that information. That was a political statement. So, yeah, as far as I'm concerned, George Floyd died of a heart attack because he was on fentanyl, because he probably swallowed a stash. I don't really, fuck that guy. Fuck George Floyd, too. I don't feel like my position on George Floyd is being represented here, because neither one of these guys will, counter-signal him. But you know what? Fuck George Floyd in his dead necrotic asshole. Fuck that guy, okay? He was a violent criminal. Fuck him.
It's honestly astounding.
I mean, that's almost as isolated as it can get. And then, but here's the real irony here. She says that because of her privilege, because she is aware of her privilege, she is supporting defund the police. But no, that is a very privileged point of view. She is an extremely wealthy woman.
It's a very
living in a very rich neighborhood. I'm assuming a gated community. She can afford personal security. I guarantee she has personal security when she goes out and about. So she's not going to be affected by this. You want to talk about privilege? You as a rich person who can afford around-the-clock, 24-hour personal security, very few people can afford that. You can. So you as a rich person saying, yeah, let's defund the police. Let's take the police out of these poor communities. So that mothers and families are going to have nobody to call.
Specifically Jewish people, because they actually have their own special community, neighborhood watch. Not like George Zimmerman, but an ethnic neighborhood watch that will beat the shit out of black people coming into their neighborhood. So, yeah, it's not that she can afford it. We're not talking about a South Africa situation here, where, we know what kind of situation we're talking about, don't we? And Matt Walsh knows. That's the thing that pisses me off about these people. Matt Walsh knows.
In the event of them being victims of crime. You want to talk about privileged? That's the privileged perspective. If you want to defy your privilege or take a position contrary to your privilege, then you would say that, hey, listen, even though I'm rich and I can afford personal security, I know most people can't. And so that's why I support the police, because by and large, in the vast majority of cases, they are protecting people, black, white, or otherwise. And I think that poor people in these communities deserve to be protected. They deserve to have law enforcement. They shouldn't be, I don't want to see these communities burned to the ground and in the grips of chaos and anarchy. I don't want to see it. Even though it doesn't affect me, because I'm rich, I don't want to see it. So if you really cared about seeing past your privilege, that would be the position you would take. Thank you.
Okay.
Notice that he doesn't deny the existence of white privilege in that. By the way, that's the conservative position, is to indulge the notion of white privilege and then to logic your way around how being a liberal is hypocritical in that framework. You can't just reject the concept outright, can you, Matt Walsh? You fucking...
Okay, so the problem with that last argument there is that he's saying, "Oh, you're privileged. It's the privileged position to think we should defund the police because if we defund the police, then poor people are going to be more vulnerable to having acts of like aggression or crimes committed against them that harm them." But that premise is wrong. We could massively defund the police and still have less privileged people being able to be protected by the police when needed to the same exact extent. And
Now this is the part where I'm going to have to counter-signal you very, very hard, MouthyInfidel. I'm sorry, what you're about to say, frankly, I had to do a retake. I had to scrap the first incarnation of this video because I got so fucking furious. I just couldn't contain myself. This is fucking insane.
I know this because the current amount of money of the police budget that goes towards preventing the kinds of crimes that actually directly harm less privileged people is currently a very small portion of the total police budget, because massive portions of the police's overall budget are going towards buying military-grade weaponry from the U.S. military that is completely not necessary for the police to keep the peace, but rather, on the contrary, just contributes to a rapidly growing police state, which is mobilized against less privileged people when they try to protest about being systematically slaughtered. Massive amounts of the police's budget go towards helping the police address issues that the police aren't best fitted to address.
Okay, so here's the problem with your theory. Here's the issue, buddy. The whole defund the police thing has come out of these riots that were spawned by George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery. So George Floyd was not murdered by some high-tech piece of machinery, but some military equipment, okay? A guy fucking knelt on his neck. By your narrative, it was not a militarized police force that killed this man. It was a cop kneeling on his neck. That was it. What are you going to do? Confiscate their legs? What are you going to do? This is an insane argument in this context. But the problem is leftists are constantly projecting their ideology onto black people. Nobody thinks like you, bro. This is an ancient left-wing argument that we need to demilitarize the police. It literally doesn't fucking matter. And this is why it pissed me off, because when you and I talked in that Discord conversation, one of the first things I brought up to you, and I provided you an article that Zero Schizo sent me, citing the Chilean government reporting that the government, well, not the government reporting, but a reporter talking about the government in Chile, showing that since the Chilean government partnered with the IDF in Israel, they had started using more aggressive tactics. Like they ran a man over with a military vehicle, and they were brutalizing citizens in the street. In no part in this video do you bring that up. You're not going to bring up the fact that these cops are using you're right. They are brutalizing people. They are. You're right in a sense. We do need to reform the police. But it's not that you can just take away their toys, because the toys aren't the problem. The problem is they're being trained by racial supremacists in Israel who teach them to treat their own citizens the way that the IDF treats Palestinians. That's the problem. And you can't, there's no money, exchange of money that's going to fix that problem. I know you want to whittle everything down to materialism, and if only blacks had more money invested in their schools, then they would do better. If only we demilitarize the police, they wouldn't have as much power to oppress people. That is irrelevant. That is a stupid argument in this context. It makes no sense whatsoever. None. You are simply projecting onto these people. And what was the reaction to these protests? What was the reaction to black people burning down parts of Minneapolis? The fucking city said, okay, we're just disbanding the police force now. We're getting rid of it. They didn't demilitarize, bro, because that's not what anyone wants. That's not what they're asking for. Excuse me. That's what you're asking for. That's what you want. Nobody else.
dress. For example, I was reading this article in favor of abolishing the police, and not abolishing the police, but defunding the police.
Say it right there, Freudian slip. Freudian slip. You fucking know what they're talking about. You know it's not about defunding or demilitarizing the police. It's about getting rid of the police. That's what they want. And I'm not saying that's what black people want. That's what BLM wants. That's what these astroturfed blacks want.
And one of the examples gave was, if you have a homeless person acting crazy on the street, what would you rather have? A social worker who's trained to work with people with mental illness, or a fucking cop who's like never even like learned how to address people with mental illness and is just there to fucking smash, right? Obviously, you would want the former. Much of what the police does.
No, that's not obvious, actually. If some crazy schizo is, like, waving a knife around on the street, like, remember that woman that, like, walked down the street and just started randomly stabbing people in the gut? It was, like, some crazy Asian lady that would just pull out a knife and literally just, like, stab people walking by her and then just keep walking casually down the street. I don't want a social worker between me and that woman. I want a cop. I want someone with a gun who can kill her if she tries to kill me. That's what I want, okay? I don't want fuck your social workers, okay? I don't want you to, let's see if I can talk this woman down from slicing my throat and brutally stabbing me to death. Yeah, maybe I can reason my way out of the situation. Why don't you just train cops like social workers if you think that's the solution? Why is it one or the other? Why is it that you need someone who's passive and incapable but trained in the sort of psychological manipulation, sort of, crisis, what do you call it? Crisis acting. Not crisis acting, Jesus Christ. Crisis management training. Why don't you just give crisis management to cops? You know what I mean? I don't understand why is that difficult? Why is that a hard thing?
Does from addressing people doing drugs or addressing crazy people or like homeless people on the streets, or addressing, I don't know, like certain like domestic disputes. Much of what the cops do could more adequately be done by other more qualified institutions, such as various kinds of social workers and so on, right?
Institutions. Why don't we just take all these crazy people and put them in institutions so that they don't have to interact with the police anymore? Let's just do that. Oh, wait, we can't. We used to do that, but thanks to leftists, we don't do that anymore. So, that's great. But you know what? Every fucking asshole leftist, and I know this because I went through college and I had these fucking asshole professors trying to tell me this bullshit that there's less abuse because of deinstitutionalization. That is a lie. That is a fucking bold-faced lie, and is provable if you've worked in any sort of social worker-related field or medical field, as I do. You fucking know it's a lie. Okay? None of your solutions have the outcome that you think. They never work out. Never. Not once. They're not meant to. You are a tool for destroying society, MouthyInfidel. And I know you're a nice guy. I know you're a good guy. And you don't understand just how destructive you are. But when you call Matt Walsh a useful idiot and you're spouting this bullshit, from my perspective, I can't take it seriously. I can't take you seriously, bro.
So massive swaths of the police's budget go towards things which don't actually help or protect less privileged people. So what that means is you could massively defund the police and less privileged people could still be protected to the same extent or even to a much greater extent. I would actually say to a much greater extent, because if we were to take away some money of the police budget that goes towards completely useless things like military grade weaponry, and instead invest that money into fixing the socioeconomic conditions that cause high levels of crime in the first place, that would do much more to fix crime and protect less privileged people than just not defunding the police and keeping the police funding at the same level that it is. So that argument is completely bunk. Okay, that was the end, I guess.
Okay, so here's the thing. I want to make a couple quick points real quick. I can actually make your argument for you better than you can, simply by virtue of actually giving a fuck about white people. There's a man named Duncan Lemp who was a part of an quote unquote anti-government organization. It was a pro-gun, libertarian organization, I guess, about like, oh, we're gonna fight back against the police state, as MouthyInfidel puts it. And so he had pictures of himself with rifles online. So the cops show up to execute what they called a banned arms search warrant or whatever. And they just shoot him. They just shoot him through his own house. They don't even knock on the fucking door. Then they lied about it. They lied. They said, oh, we knocked on the door. He came to the door. He brandished a weapon and we shot. Except that his body was found in his bed and a neighbor recorded the whole thing. So they lied. And they showed up with a fucking SWAT van, an armored van with, presumably automatic rifles. And they shot him in his bed as he lay sleeping beside his girlfriend. Now that is an instance where you could say these cops shouldn't have this kind of weaponry. They should not be able to do this kind of shit. That was a clearly illegal thing to do. That was a dirty shoot, and all the fucking cops that were complicit in that should have been reprimanded. And whoever fired the shot should have been fired and put in fucking prison forever for murder. Then you have another guy. I guarantee you never heard of this guy. Tony Timpa. I hadn't heard of him until fairly recently. I believe this was back in 2016. This man, who was not a criminal, this was almost identical to the George Floyd case. If you watch the video, almost identical. But the only difference being that he wasn't a violent piece of shit like George Floyd was. So this man was a schizophrenic. He was off his medications. And I guess he went to a mall. Presumably, it was mall security that had handcuffed him and subdued him. So they have him in cuffs. They call the police. The cops show up. They try to switch the cuffs, to take the plastic cuffs off and put their cuffs on him, just to save time. Anyway, they put him on his belly. He's screaming from the beginning of the interaction. He's screaming, "You're gonna kill me! You're gonna kill me!" And guess what? They did. They knelt on his back, not on his neck. They knelt on his back until he couldn't breathe, and he asphyxiated and died. And guess what? No riots. No riots for him. Virtually no news coverage. Nobody knows about this man. Nobody gave a shit about this man. Nobody gave a shit about Duncan Lemp or any of the other victims of police brutality who happen to be white. Because that's what you get. If you're an actual white person, unlike Natalie Portman, if you're actually white, nobody gives a fuck about you, and you have zero privilege in this country.
I am just scum. I am dirt.